Everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Craft of the Draft podcast, and you might also be joining us on the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel. We're lucky enough today to have a special guest, Tasmanian Devils under-18 boys coach Jeromey Webberley. Thanks for coming on, Jeromey. How are you?
Yeah, fantastic. Jonty and Nathan, thanks for having me on.
And I guess the first opener, a big announcement last week, as everyone is now aware of, where Tasmania have been handed their 19th AFL licence as the 19th club to get AFL licence. What is the feeling down in Tassie at the moment? What was your initial reaction? Even the boys, how have they taken it, and what's the vibe been at training and just around the club at the moment?
Oh, it's one of excitement, isn't it? It's been something that we've had many attempts to get our own AFL licence, and to finally see that come to light is fantastic. So I think there's excitement, number one, but also generally just some pride. And Tasmanians are extremely passionate about their AFL footy. We're a football state, and to finally be on the national stage in a few years to come yet. But I think there's a sense of pride and excitement, to be honest.
And from your point of view as well, you've obviously been in Tasmania your whole life, I believe. You obviously came through the AFL system via Tasmania, so you've sort of seen the ups and downs, and Tasmania have been fighting for this for so long. What does it mean on a personal front? And, tell us about what that sort of fight for that 19th licences looks like in a more historic sense, I guess.
Yeah, well, I suppose if we start with the second question, I think that I was reading something the other day where I think our first charge, if you like to call it, or our first attempt was in 1996. If I might be mistaken, It might be 1 or 2 years off there. But, I think there's been 4 or 5 attempts to get into the game, and we've been unsuccessful. And it's just great to finally have that opportunity. As I said before, I'm no different to any other Tasmanian in terms of the feeling. The excitement I just want it to be now. More importantly, the pride, I think, is the biggest thing for us. We think we're going to be able to compete on the national stage. It's great to show Tasmania off, not just its people and its talent here, but also our beautiful state as well. So I'm no different to any other Tasmanian in terms of the excitement about the opportunity that it's coming for us, and not just for our program and people involved in footy, but children coming through, both boys and girls, that have aspirations and dreams about playing at the highest level they can do it for their own state now. So I think there's some of the things that are fantastic around the announcement.
And you touch on a couple of key themes there that I just want to pick up. You talk about being able to represent your state, that the Tasmanians will now be able to do at AFL level, and also the pride in Tasmania. I know one thing that you speak about quite a lot, and others involved in both the boys and girls programs from an under-18s Tassie Devils point of view, is the pride and the values that come with playing for the jumper. So before we jump into anything else, sort of tell us about that. It seems to be something that you personally and as a club seem to really stress to the boys and girls that do get to do it. You're the only club up until now that's been able to represent your state in a footy sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were always, I think coaches are always looking, there's game plans and, you have talent that makes up your team and all those types of things. But essentially, all coaches are looking for to connect their players in a way. And I think we have a fantastic opportunity through our jumper, and we've got a map on it, and we're representing something that is ours and representing our own state. So we do a lot of work around connecting our players through that and understanding the characteristics around Tasmania's history, and a lot of it's around that really selfless, team-orientated mentality and attitude. So that's something that we think that's held us in really good stead over the course of the last 18 months since I've been involved, and obviously the due course of the Tasmanians' history. But I think that's a really good way for us to connect our group together. We've obviously got our regional hubs, 3 regional hubs being, Hobart, Launceston and Penguin. So connecting those people together can be quite challenging, but I think we can connect them through the one thing that is constant with all 3 hubs is that they're representing the state. So we do a fair bit of work around that, and we take great pride in understanding what that is and putting that on show every week.
I guess, can you talk on your footy journey? Obviously, you were drafted in 2009, and you had that experience growing up in Tassie and then making the draft. What was, take me back 15 years or so, what was the experience growing up in Tassie and trying to make it as a professional football, and what have the differences been from then to now in terms of how the talent and pathway programs are set up, and how do you get how do you get to the elite level in Tassie? What's it set up like at the moment?
Yeah, well, the first thing you've got to be identified early on, and you go through. We do a lot of work. Like our talent managers do a lot of work around identifying talent and those types of things through local competitions, and spend a lot of time on weekends at footy. And then, we have development series through under 13s, 14s, and 15s. We have involvement with the SSA program as well, which is the School Sports Australia program, where our players Tasmanians go over and represent through the schools program. So we have involvement with that and identification through that process as well. And then essentially your Tasmanian Devils, your representation of the Tasmanian Devils program doesn't come until you're under 16 years of age. So then we go into the Div 2 competition as well, where we play the academies in Brisbane, Sydney, GWS, in both the boys and girls, and NT as well. I forgot NT, unfortunately. But yeah, we play those guys in the under 16s in both the boys and girls now. And then obviously you progress into the Coates Tasmanian Devils program once you complete your under 16 journey. So that's sort of how it's set up right now. I think it's going to be fantastic with the AFL license coming in to see how we can better that system moving forward. So there's a really clear pathway and a really clear direction to follow if you are a talented junior and you do get recognised early on.
And I suppose the first part of that question, what was that like for you to sort of experience, and how have you seen that progress in your role as coach now?
Yeah, look, I followed a different journey through being drafted. Like I was very small and probably immature through 16, 17, 18. So I had to do it the hard way. I participated in the Tasmanian Mariners back in those days, but I was only ever in the Southern Hub. I never actually made it into the final squad. So I had to go back and invest time and effort into my TSL club in Clarence, and I was lucky enough to get drafted in 2009 through the TSL platform, and we played a state game there, which I was lucky enough to participate in and played well in. I think that obviously helped me one through participating in that state game, but also my club Clarence were lucky enough to play in the grand final that year and win it, which I think definitely helped me. But I had a bit of a different journey reaching the AFL level. I wasn't lucky enough to get drafted until I was 21. So it was probably very similar setup back then to what it is now. I think our talent identification and our sort of structure underneath our Tasmanian Devils is better than what it was back then.
Yeah, and I suppose to extend on that, Def, with the introduction of that 19th license, tell us about how that's sort of going to benefit the depth from a talent pathway point of view. I suppose we see with the Jack Jumpers, just to reference them, how much basketball seems to be taking off in the state from things you read. No doubt the same thing will happen with footy, with the identity it already has, let alone what it will now gain as a result of that. So tell us about the vibe of junior sort of footy clubs when you are going out and watching, and how you see that growing.
Yeah, look, it's the reality is the more people you have playing the game, the more talent you're going to have, right? And there's no different in footy or basketball or any other sport. So we're really hoping that the announcement around the licence and granting us an AFL team is going to mean that we have our participation goes through the roof, and we're going to hopefully have a VFL and VFLW teams in the not too distant future, which gives a really clear pathway for all our kids coming through. And at the moment, I think, and I might need to be corrected here, but it's my understanding that our participation rate up until under 12s is really strong, and then we fall away a little bit. We seem to lose people to the game and all those types of things because they choose other sports. Whereas I think having a clear direction and understanding about, we're going to be in the AFL, there's a really clear pathway. There's a really clear pathway to follow. I think that's hopefully going to hold a number of players, both boys and girls, in our programs, and we'll see the fruits of that. The fruits of being granted the license, and we'll have stronger participation through those teen years, which I think is going to be really important.
Yeah. Tell us about the talent hotspots down there. I see participation. When you do some research, it comes up that Clarence, Hobart and Launceston seem to be the areas where their participation is the highest. Does that translate into talent hotspots when you do get to that sort of 16s level?
Yeah, that's probably true. Like we've obviously got the two TSL clubs in the north, in North Launceston and Launceston. They've been powerhouses in the state league for a number of years now, and there's no doubt that their talent identification and development talent's fantastic, and there's a pathway for players to follow to reach the to make sure that they're following the pathway in terms of playing community footy, being recognised, potentially heading to a TSL club and then into the Devils program. I think that has been really beneficial. Clarence is, I've had a lot of involvement with Clarence, obviously coaching there for 5 or 6 years, but Clarence has got a really strong zone. Their zone is big. It's a young zone as well, in terms of there's a lot of the young families and it's a developing area and those types of things, and they've traditionally been really strong through their juniors. And if you look at their junior clubs, both Brighton and Lindisfarne are huge growing areas. They've had a lot of success over the last couple of years with their draftees. Like you look at Sam Banks and Jack Collins, another one this year, Fraser Turner a couple of years ago. So they've had a number of players, Tom McCullum and Cam Owen last year as well. So they've had a number of players over the last couple of years that have reached the top level and been lucky enough to get drafted. So, and if you look at their TSL senior team now, it's very young, but a very exciting group. So, and it sort of ebbs and flows through TSL clubs, depending on where the population is and how it's working.
Yeah, and what? So you say it ebbs and flows. Is that just part of the natural growth for other clubs? Is there things that other clubs can do to sort of get up to speed with your Clarences and your Hobarts, like you say, or is that part of the ebbs and flows and the natural growth?
No, I think it's part of the ebbs and flows. Like I think most TSL clubs are doing a really good job with their talent identification and bringing young talented players through. So. It's obviously there's a number of things that are associated with the makeup of his zone, and areas will go through ebbs and flows in terms of their age demographic and those types of things as well. So, I think all clubs do a fantastic job within the TSL and at community level as well about identifying talent and bringing it through.
And what is the archetypal Tasmanian footballer that you've probably realised and seen coming through Tasmanian's development program and even now coaching it? What do you look to get out of these boys coming through? Do you see a difference in the boys that are making it? We had Lockie Cowan last year, who I'm a big fan of, being a Carlton supporter, and he's been fantastic. And you just see that grit and determination, and he's just been fantastic. Is that something that's really brought up through the development ranks in Tassie?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Look, I think there's firstly, I think that and I've only been in the role 18 months now, but the first thing I noticed when I got the role was that players come into our program having a really good understanding around what it takes to make a good team, and also they have a really clear understanding around the game, and they have good football brains. So that's a credit to their junior coaches and their senior coaches coming through, that they're providing that resource for them and their knowledge. So I think what you'll see with Lockie, Seth Campbell, Tom McCullum, Sam Banks, like they're very educated. They have a really solid understanding of the game, and they know how it needs to be played. And there's no doubt, like Lockie's a prime example. He's got some opportunity at AFL level in his first year, but his contest and defense stuff has been outstanding. He just looks like an AFL player now, and there's no doubt that having a really clear, obviously you need the physical attributes and the physical skill, but also you need to make sure you've got to have the right personality. You've got to have a really clear understanding around how the game is played, and I think that's one thing that I've noticed in my first 18 months here, is that all the boys that come in and girls that come into our program understand what we're trying to achieve, and they have really good game understanding and game knowledge.
No doubt something that would need to be, I suppose, no doubt an important factor behind those boys' growth, and also the girls that are coming through as well, would be having coaches that are all on the same page. I suppose another element of this is the coaching depth down there. What does that sort of look like? Tell us about, give us an insight into that.
Yeah, look, I think that the coaching talent down here is very good. We've got very good coaches in the Devils program that have got a lot of experience and some AFL content as well. And then, you look around the TSL programs, you've got Mitch Law, who was drafted to Hawthorn, and he's come back and invested time in the state. He's won 4 or 5 premierships. You've had Taylor Whitford and Zane Littlejohn in the last couple of years that have gone over to the mainland and been involved in Brisbane Academy, and Taylor obviously going and being involved in Melbourne. They're both coaching VFL clubs now. You've got Peter Ryan at Clarence that has been involved in Brisbane Academy as well at junior level, and now he's coaching TSL. So Alan Christensen is coaching the Lauderdale Footy Club. So there's so many great young coaches around the state that have got AFL experience, both from a playing perspective or a coaching perspective as well. So I think the talent in terms of the coaching ranks is fantastic. Aaron Cornelius as well has been at Glenhawk and helping out Maverick Weller with the state team this year is another one that's been exposed to Brisbane Lions. He's been exposed to the Hawthorn Footy Club as well. So, there's no doubt that our coaching ranks down here are very good.
Certainly, it's an impressive CV that you've just sort of read out. What sort of responsibilities do the, I suppose, assistants in the Tassie Devils program have, given that you do have satellite hubs who operate like Vic Country, I suppose, clubs that our listeners would be familiar with? What sort of responsibilities do they have, given that they would have to run and coordinate those training sessions?
Yeah, well, they're basically like a senior coach in their own region, and that's how we treat it. Like, I lean on them a lot to, although I send out training plans and have, they have a clear understanding about what I want, the reality is that they control their regions and they make sure that they educate their players on how they see fit to one, get the most out of them, but two, to give them a real clear understanding around, how we want the game to look and how we want it to be played. So they're essentially a senior coach in their own right, except for game day when they come in.
Yeah.
And, they've got their line specific roles, but they look after. So I'm very lucky to have Mav Weller on the Northwest Coast, who's obviously, been under some outstanding coaches and had a great AFL career himself. So he looks after the Northwest region. It's been outstanding through that process. And Darren Crawford controls the north of the state for me in the North Hub, who's, was involved in the Tasmanian Devils back in the VFL days and had an outstanding career with North Launceston. So I'm very lucky with some of the assistant coaches that I've got around the state. And they're doing an outstanding job at this present stage in developing our talent and making sure they perform on the weekend.
And I guess sort of the last talking point back on the talent itself, the boys. And I thought it was an interesting topic. I mean, being Tasmania, you are the only team who really has to travel by plane every week. You'll have obviously the Melbourne teams come in every second week, but is that an advantage for the boys? Because obviously that's realistic to what if you're getting drafted, you're going to have to travel quite a bit, especially if you're an interstate team. Is that an advantage you've seen in the Talent League program, that your boys do have to be able to perform to a high standard and reach high performance levels, even when they might have to get up a bit earlier each morning to make that flight and play interstate?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's got some major benefits. Like the first one is I discussed before about connecting our regions together, and we spend a lot of time at the airport together, and I think that's a great thing for us, and obviously hotel rooms and all those types of things and eating dinner together. I think that's really good, and it also gives them that experience if they are lucky enough to get drafted or to go play VFL footy or play in the SANFL, that they get that experience of travelling and, making sure that their routine pre-game and all those types of things is correct, because they get that experience every second week. And I do think it helps us connect our group together because we get to spend obviously a chunk of time together that other clubs don't get that opportunity to do that have satellite hubs.
And I guess the last thing to really round it off, what should we expect from your boys for the end of the season? What are the goals from a coaching perspective, and even just talent-wise, what are you expecting out of your boys to round out? Still a long time to go in this season, but what are the main goals for you and the team?
Oh, look, it's just individually. It's about making sure that we're continuing to develop, and we don't want to leave any stone unturned as an individual, from an individual perspective. As a collective team, we want to make sure that we're bringing effort every week and we're competitive. We're giving ourselves an opportunity to perform well and show off the Tasmanian characteristics. We believe that if as an individual, you control your energy and control your intent for the contest, and you look after the person next to you, that as a collective team that will perform well and be competitive every week. We've got a really young group this year. I think every week we've had, 8 and 10 players of 17 years or 16 years of age. So we've been really excited about the talent we've got coming through. But I suppose as a whole, we're looking to continue to represent our state extremely well and make sure we give ourselves, we give each other an opportunity to put ourselves on show.
Well, awesome. Thank you very much for joining us, Jeremy. It's been a pleasure and great to talk about this news in a different depth and perspective. We really appreciate your time. we'll be moving on in this second part of the podcast to the Vic Metro and Young Guns review. But thank you, Jeremy, for your time. Really appreciate it.
No worries, guys. Cheers.